everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Yankees with my friend and co-host Sam. And, the Yankees kind of in a weird spot, right? Like, after yesterday's loss, technically splitting a series with the Astros isn't the worst thing in the world, but it feels like the Yankees aren't in a situation where they can be cashing in moral checks. They've got to be winning baseball games. And yesterday was an opportunity for them to get some much-needed momentum, head into a series with the White Sox, who just sold, a team that you expect to play well against, but last time we played them, we lost series to them. And on top of losing that game, Rodon gets shelled. It was an opportunity for him to have a statement outing and really, energize this fan base, energize the clubhouse. Not only does he lay an egg, he exits the start hurt. So whether, we're in August, the AAA season ends in mid-September, the AA season ends in mid-September, it's going to be really hard to get Rodon rehab starts if he misses an extended period of time. He says it's not that big of a deal, that it might not be an IL situation. But I think that given the track record of this team and, how they describe injuries versus how they diagnose injuries, it feels like we should be a little bit more pessimistic, or it feels like the optimism about his injury isn't going to be as high. So I guess, with his situation injury-wise, with the Yankees having, a couple of options in the minor leagues that they can bring up that are on the 40-man roster, and overall with the just uncertainty surrounding the rotation. Sam, what are some of the moves you're going to be making if Rodon goes in the IL? How are you going to handle his injury situation? How do you think they should handle his injury situation? And how are you doing today, my friend? I know it's a crazy Monday for the Yankees, so let it rip, man.
I'm good. Yeah, it's been a good week. What I will say, with the Rodon injury situation is I feel like to an extent, he kind of got rushed back. We really needed him for this team and for our pitching staff in general. We just weren't getting the production out of our starters. When he first came back, his first start against Chicago was great. I want to say he went 5 innings. I think he gave up 2 solo shots. One of them was a nuke from Cody Bellinger, and he looked good. And coming off of an injury like that, it was an elbow or a wrist or a forearm, whatever it was. I expected to give him some time, and I was giving Rodon a lot of leash, but he hasn't really been good. His numbers across the board are down. Everything's tanked. The walks are tanked. The strikeouts are tanked. He's got a 6.38 FIP or something like that. Negative .54. Everything across the board is so bad. And now with this injury, I don't really know how to go about this, because realistically, he could have been playing hurt the entire time. And, I know they say it's a precautionary thing, and we talked pre-show about Jose Trevino and the wrist thing, and he's been hurt for 8 months. And now they finally decided to shut him down. So I know how this team handles injuries like that, and it's going to be really hard to get these rehab starts because, like you said, AAA is done in a month. So, and realistically, right now, I don't know if the Yankees are in a spot where they need to just throw Rodon out there just because. There's guys in the minors that you can give starts to. You can give starts to Randy Vasquez. You can give starts to Johnny Brito. Who knows what's going on with Severino? I mean, I guess he's still going to stay in the rotation because now this is an injury thing and the thing with Herman and whatever. But right now, it's super concerning to see how this team deals with those injuries. I think that Rodon is an upbeat, no matter what competitor. He wants to be on that field and he wants to pitch every single day that he can. But right now, in the Yankees' best interest in the first year of a 6-year deal worth $162 million, if you need to shut him down and get him right for 24, because this team to me looks dead. I don't think they're going to make a crazy playoff run. They might not even make the playoffs. If you need to shut him down and get him right for next season so he can build up his confidence back and get that velo back that he had, 1-2 years ago, whatever, I think that's the play that you have to make. I don't want to see this guy pitch hurt for the rest of the season if it's, a very serious thing that he can't really come back from. I need to see this organization handle these injuries better, because it was probably a lingering thing, and he's probably been hurt for the past couple of starts, but nobody said anything because we need him right now. So the whole situation is really confusing, and we're going to see what happens when we get more details about it and if he's going to have an IL stint or what it is, but I just think that, if you want to get him right for next year, I think they should just sit him, honestly. If he's genuinely hurt like that, don't have him pitch their injury. Just roll, man. There are other guys that we can give starts to.
Yeah, I don't disagree. A big thing for the Yankees going forward, too, is, what does this team look like in 2024? They have a lot of, things they're going to have to change about the roster, most notably the lineup, and you really don't want to be in a situation where, you further aggravate what's wrong with Rodon, and then you're in need of another starter, at least in the early parts of the 2024 season. You don't really know if you can rely on Domingo Germán coming back. Severino's a free agent. I anticipate he's not coming back. I don't think he's very good anymore. Frankie Montas is a free agent. I know he hasn't impacted the team at all, but you can't just say, oh, he's going to come back. The Yankees are just going to re-sign him and he's going to be perfectly healthy. There are two risks with him. Number one, are you going to re-sign him? And number two, is he going to be healthy? You have a couple young guys that you, as you mentioned, you have the Randy Vasquez, the Johnny Britos of the world. Clark Schmidt, he's been pretty solid for the Yankees. He's been consistent. But the question you have to have is, when is he going to hit his innings limit? This is his first season, not just in the majors, being a full-time starter in a very long time. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, shoulder stuff, elbow stuff. What does that look like? What does that innings limit look like? Like, he can't be asked to pitch 160, 70 innings this year, right? Like, that feels a little bit much, especially if you're trying to stretch him out and you anticipate he takes another step forward next year. Can he be the 5-starter? Sure. Garrett Cole is the Cy Young. Like, he's unbelievable. He's great. Like, he's your number one. You don't have to worry about that. I'm very encouraged by Nestor. I think he slots into that 3 spot really well. You want to make sure Rodon slots into that 2 spot and he's healthy. From a stuff basis, in terms of his movement, everything looks fine. Like, yes, the Colorado start kind of messed up his movement because it messes up everyone's movement, especially pitchers with fastballs that rely on vertical movement. But, overall stuff looks fine. The velo looks fine. As you mentioned, it's just like the stats are all down. It feels like it's mechanical. Might have been pitching through something. The command wasn't there. The walks were up. He was missing spots. Like, you'll see him blow 96 by Kyle Tucker, and he ends up walking him. It's like, hey, you've got an unbelievable fastball. Just stay in the zone. And he had trouble doing that. He had trouble, getting downhill reliably. And that type of stuff's going to happen. It doesn't matter how good your stuff is. If you're throwing meatballs and you're walking a bunch of guys, runs are going to score, right? Like, that's just baseball. I guess the big thing you're trying to figure out too is you kind of want to figure out what you have next year. Randy Vasquez, you want to figure out what he is a little bit. You can't define a person's career on the first 2 months of their career. Like, Schmidt was terrible to start the season, and then he picked it up. But if Vasquez is something and you don't have to worry about one of your rotation spots, or maybe he's more of a reliever, whatever it may be, it gives you a little bit more clarity with your roster. And I think, as you mentioned, this team's probably not making the playoffs. So you got to figure out what you have. And, it doesn't feel like it's worth pushing Rodon for a playoff push at this point. It really doesn't. It doesn't feel like it's worth it. Judge is different because I feel like the difference is that it's a toe thing that he's managing and doctors have cleared him. So, like, I feel a little bit more confident that it's okay to keep playing him. But in Rodon's case, like, pitchers are just so volatile, and he's an injury-prone guy already. You kind of just want to hope you get the most value out of it. This is a kind of a weird optimistic take, but at least he's saving the bad year for this year if he's going to have one, right? Like, it's not like him being good would have changed that much with this team. They can't hit. Like, the problems are all offense, right? You just preserve that pitching staff. So, I guess kind of the next question I have for you is, what exactly are the Yankees going to do with their rotate? I guess we could slide guys in, but, what are they going to do with the rotation, number one? But number two, more importantly, like, what is the mentality here with the direction for the rest of the season? Like, your number two guys down. They talked up, their reinforcements, the guys coming back from injury as their deadline moves. Now some of those guys are hurt again, right? So it's like, what really is the direction going forward? Do you think they're going to end up kind of like, at least in September, maybe? I think they'll give the month of August to try to compete. But in September, are we going to see a bunch of rookies on the field? Like, what does your game plan look like? And what do you think this team's going to end up doing as the season progresses?
Yeah, and I think that, over here, we've, advocated for that a lot, that we want to see the young guys up. Like you mentioned Vasquez, we want to see what Vasquez has. And, like, even, like, with the outfielders, maybe we see a Pereira in September. Like, we'll see what happens with that. I just think now, we'll see how the rest of August goes and if they can compete for a playoff spot. Because, if they can make the playoffs, they will try to make the playoffs. But I think once September hits, they just have to give those guys run. And with Rodon, I'm honestly, I completely agree with the point that you brought up, is that, like, this is the bad year. If this is the bad year of the 6-year contract, and, like, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I just think you have to try something else. So, like what you have on this roster right now clearly is not working. And just see what you have. Just give something a shot. And I think that's really what the month of September is going to be like. I feel like it's going to feel like 2016 when they brought up all the young guys and then went after it again in 2017. So I just think we'll get the reinforcements from the kids down low. And, I feel like they will probably roll with that because they'll probably be like, yeah, like, we're not going to make playoffs. Like, let's roll something out. Let's see what we have. I do have something else for you that I did find interesting. So what the problem with this team right now is this team can't hit. So in the offseason, the Yankees signed Carlos Rodon to a 6-year, $162 million deal. Freddie Freeman, who is now a Los Angeles Dodger, has a 6-year, $162 million deal. And while this is two separate off seasons and the situations are different, where, we were looking at bringing back Rizzo, or like, we're going to go get Matt Olson, or we're going to get Freddie Freeman, I would have rather taken the career 300 hitter that is Freddie Freeman, perennial NL MVP candidate, over, we're not really sure what Rodon's going to be. This contract could be a complete bust, and we have no idea. Right now, it looks horrible. But right now, the organization decided to prioritize the wrong thing in signing a guy like Rodon to the exact same money to the money that they could have gave Freddie Freeman a couple years ago. So I feel like the front office does not have their priorities straight. And if the Yankees had Freddie Freeman right now, what are we saying? Like, I feel like this offense completely transforms, and you're looking at, Judge, Stanton, Freeman? Like, and I don't know what those conversations were like, but my God, they would be in the playoff conversation right now. So I just feel like the front office needs to get better at figuring out what they need and how they can get it, instead of going out and adding, Rodon to a staff that, was already fine and was already, a top 10 staff in baseball, maybe even top 5 without him. And, it's just, really concerning, because what the hell is that situation? We could have had Freeman right now. We would be having a completely different conversation. But that's, completely out the window. But that's, just a weird comparison. Even the money-wise thing, man, it's the exact same thing. The years and down to the penny, it's all the same. So that is just so concerning to me.
Yeah, I think, kind of the interesting thing, too, that you mentioned is, just the gap in what Freddie Freeman is versus what Carlos Rodon is. Carlos Rodon can be very good, but that's like a top 5 to 10 pitcher. Is that more valuable than what Freddie Freeman's going to be? And so, a couple of things I think are really important, things I would like the Yankees to kind of, shift towards going forward. I'm not going to sit here and say, I can't believe they signed Carlos Rodon in a bad way, because I wanted Carlos Rodon. Like, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. Now, revisionist history, not going to look so good. The contract is not projecting very well, especially when you're already dealing with injury issues and a bad year in year one. But one thing I find interesting, despite the fact that pitchers across the board have gotten better, starting pitching war has only gone down as the years have gone on. So, for example, pitchers, the war between 2010 and 2022 for starting pitchers, 10% worse those seasons. Even 10 years ago, 331 F war in 2012, 321.9 in 2022. That feels like it's trending in the wrong direction for a department that, or in the pitching sense, a part of baseball that's become super analytical and has gotten a lot better, right? So, why are starting pitchers generating less value? They don't pitch as much, right? Like, you pull guys a lot earlier. Their injury risk. Guys are getting shoulder injuries and elbow injuries at rates we haven't seen before. Part of that is because they're throwing at max effort. It's like the human body has evolved in the last 10 years enough, that's not physically possible, for the body to sustain 99 miles per hour velocity consistently compared to 93 or 92 in years past, right? So, from a standpoint of volatility and injuries, that position is super volatile. The Yankees have one of the most expensive rotations and pitching staffs in baseball. It feels like a position group you really shouldn't be investing that much in long term, maybe short term, but there are some exceptions. Like, Garrett Cole's worth so much because he pitches every 5th day, right? Like, he pitches a ton and he's worth a lot of money because he does it and does so at a high level. But I guess the question the thought process, or kind of like the mentality I'm at here is, let's say it's a playoff game. Are you going, like, game 1 for the ALCS last year, the Yankees went Tylen for 4 innings and the bullpen, right? If they went with their A bullpen instead of Clark Schmidt and Frankie Montas, right, they hold the Astros to maybe 2 runs that game, right? That's like getting a game 1, game 2 type starter performance. These bullpens are so good nowadays, you can shorten starts for guys, and in the postseason, win on just your bullpen, right? The Yankees, their starting pitching's never been standout excellent over a large period of time. That's more of a recent thing. Typically speaking, it's their bullpen that carries them in the postseason. So I guess the question really is, how valuable are starting pitchers at this point for the Yankees to be investing a lot there? If you put $162 million into a position player, there are guys like a Brandon Nimmo's of the world who are making money in that realm, and they're extremely valuable to their offense. And Brandon Nimmo isn't a superstar. He's just a pretty good player, right? I'm not dissing Brandon Nimmo. I love Brandon Nimmo, but you kind of get my point here. Sam, I guess my question for you is, this offseason direction going forward, the Yankees should be taking flyers on pitchers, not on hitters. And they do this so well with development. Take the flyers on pitchers, find some guys with high stuff. Randy Vasquez has elite level stuff. Like, his pitches are nasty. You mean to tell me you give him an offseason with Matt Blake and that dude's not going to be at least competent? You can make him a 5-inning pitcher and then throw it to the bullpen. That'll work for me. Go get me big bats. I think that's the direction I kind of want to see this organization go. I feel like you kind of have to focus more on investing heavy capital into bats. And I guess the question I have for you before, because at the end of the day, it's really hard for us to sit here and just say, oh, you should just get bats. What type of bat are you looking for in a new hitter? It doesn't have to be a specific guy, but what are the type of things you need from the next big investment the Yankees are going to make offensively, if they are going to make one?
I mean, I feel like we call for years for contact-oriented bats. That's like what we talk about pretty much every day with this team. This is a team that's bottom 5 in batting average realistically, and like I know that like in today's day and age, like batting average doesn't mean anything. Like, it's really just about like getting on base and that kind of stuff. But there's no movement. Like the other day, what was it, 7-3, and they hit 3 solo home runs. Like, imagine if there were 3 guys on base. That's a 7-6 ball game at that point. Like, it completely changes the tide. And I completely agree with what you said. And like, it's weird because last season, like, the starting pitching market was so bad. Like, Tyone got $18 million last year. Like, he got $72 million over 4 years. And Jameson Tyone is not worth that money. Like, he's been one of the worst pitchers of baseball this year. And the starting pitching market was like so inflated, and that's why I think they ended up giving Rodon that money, just because like of where the market was at. But right now, what they need to do, I guess like Montas off the book, Severino, and like they'll have to fill out a rotation. But like, I'm willing to, rely on the young guys and roll with the bullpen, because that's always what the Yankees have been, very bullpen oriented, and like, let's pull our guy in the 4th inning and we'll run our A bullpen for 5 innings. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? That's like very normal for the Yankees, instead of going out and just splashing, $300 million on another pitcher. I don't think it's worth it. And with Garrett Cole, like you said, the guy doesn't get hurt. He's a horse. So I'm okay with paying him that money, because I know that he's going to come out on every 5th day and give you, he's going to give up 2 over 6, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Anybody else, I'm not really comfortable with that right now, man. And I just like, take the flyers on the starters, go out and get bats. That's where you should be allocating your assets right now. And it's weird because of the payroll situation that they're in. And they'll get money off this year. Like, they'll get the Donaldson contract off and like other things like that that'll be able to free up some cap for them. But I just think they need to go in the offseason and, assemble some sort of different lineup, just because, it's not working right now. Clearly, it's just not working right now. And with the upcoming free agent class, it's weird because there aren't like a lot of like huge names. And while we can sit here and fantasize about Juan Soto in 2 years, do we really think the Yankees are going to do that? Do we really think that the Yankees are going to spend money on Shohei Ohtani in the offseason? Like, I don't think that happens. I don't think the Yankees have it in them to go out and get one of those high priced guys again, because there's so much money tied up in now Judge and Stanton, and they have Rizzo for the next 2 years, and Cole and Rodon. Like, there's just so much money that's tied up in there, and they have to do something. I would prioritize bats like hell. I don't want to see them sign a starter above $10 million, because at this point, it's not worth it. Starting pitching's so volatile. You can go out and throw guys for 4 or 5 innings and then let your bullpen do the work. I think that's the way that this game is trending into, and I think that big money pitchers are going to start to fade away because of what, like you said, Fangraphs WAR is like depleted, but it's because they're not pitching as much. So I just feel like moving forward, the next 5 years, I don't want to see this again from the Yankees. And like you mentioned with Rodon, like us getting Rodon, I was not upset about getting. I was hyped that we got Rodon. And it's not a diss on Rodon. It's really just about like where the Yankees are allocating their resources and where their priorities are. And I think Rodon could be a good pitcher, and I hope he is for the next 5 years. I hope he's awesome. But I just feel like there has to be a mentality shift in the way this team approaches free agency and the way this team approaches trades, because they just do not have their priorities straight whatsoever. And they have to go out and get bats. That's got to be the number one thing right now.
And also, like, I kind of need to see some sort of like a clubhouse shift. Like, it feels like something's cracked in that clubhouse. Like, obviously, like, you can't do anything about certain incidents. Like, I'm not going to sit here and cite the Domingo Germán incidents like, the clubhouse is cracked, right? Like, that's an individual thing, and obviously, I hope he gets the help he needs. But I mean more so in the sense of, like, man, they just need some guys who are a little bit more fun. Like, I don't know if you saw this article I released this morning. Tommy Kahnle's a maniac. Like, I think Tommy Kahnle, what he does for that bullpen and that pitching staff, there's an off-field presence there, right? I need a guy who's just fun, who's just got the. It's bad. It sucks that Oswaldo Cabrera isn't good because number one, you relied upon him to help you in left field, but also as a dude, like it's kind of hard to be the confident, smiling, guy in the clubhouse when your average is like under 200, your OPS plussing at like 60 something or 50 something. It's hard to do that, right? The Yankees there needs to be a little bit more just like they're the Bronx Bombers and they haven't really lived up to that. This is supposed to be a team that you're supposed to look at that offense, you'd be like, damn, we're playing the Yankees. You know what I mean? Like they're supposed to score runs on you. When you think of the two Texas teams, right? Even when even when Texas is bad, you're like, they can hit. You know what I mean? There are certain teams that just have the reputation of Fenway, the Red Sox, right? Like Red Sox, they're not great, but they can hit, right? Like Toronto, they've underperformed, but they hit. You know what I mean? The Yankees have the pitching aspect of it, and I think that there are aspects of their pitching development that are far beyond a lot of their competitors. Now it's just a matter of, hey, as you mentioned, figure out the financial allocations, right? Brian Cashman, I think, has to be a little bit more of an innovative, forward-thinking GM. I think he plays a little bit too much by his own book, and I kind of get why he does. If you're in the industry for 30 years, like, I'm not going to sit here and say you should never trust your own intuition, but I think some of the best things the Yankees have done, which is like hiring Matt Blake and Sam Breen and revamping the pitching staff, required the Yankees saying, you know what, our process is flawed. We've got to revamp this area of our organization. And that's brought them a bunch of success. From a prospect standpoint, they've done a pretty good job with that, right? Like they have a pretty good farm system. Baseball America, 6 top 100 prospects, whatever. Trust these guys, right? Like if Everson Pereira hits, man, he's a guy who's more of a free swinger. But hey, that's kind of a fun guy to have in your lineup. Like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old kid. He hits bombs. He's a little bit of a free swinger, but he's got some speed. He's a dynamic player. More guys like that. Like what Glaber has done this year is super encouraging because you can now have another guy outside of just Aaron Judge that you plan on retaining and you actively want your team who can help stabilize your lineup. If you make certain additions, like, Cody Bellinger, you mentioned he had a home run for Rodon. Back then, we were like, oh, this is his Yankee showcase, right? Unfortunately, the Cubs are now probably going to make the postseason. But hey, if that deal doesn't get done, do the Yankees explore that? I really wanted Heimer Candelario. You really wanted Heimer Candelario. He also went to the Cubs, but, he's playing pretty well. Do they go out and get a bat like that? Like, it doesn't have to be $300 million on a bat. It could be, hey, you spent $50 million here. You took like a $10 million flyer there, right? Like, if you make savvy acquisitions, you platoon in certain spots, whatever it's got to be, I don't think we have a specific set, like it has to be done this way. We just want to see it get better. And the last thing I wanted to talk about that you mentioned before I pass it off to you if you have any final thoughts, you mentioned the average thing, right? Average is important because it helps raise your OBP floor as well. Like that's another thing too here, like getting hits plays into getting on base. I think that there's been kind of an overcorrection of like, batting average is now more of a taboo term. Like if you use batting average, people just assume you're not locked in with modern data. And trust me, I'm locked in, guys. You know what I mean? I'm locked in. I'm dialed in. I'm like Russell Wilson out here. You know what I mean? But big thing here is that, the average, you can't really have a high OBP if you're not getting hits, right? Like that's really hard to do. Even Joe Gallo, he was an OBP guy, but if he hit like 230, 240, that OBP is more like 360, 370, 380 instead of like 340 or 350, right? Glaber this year, he's not walking a ton. It's definitely above average, but because he's hitting around 270, his OBP is around 340, right? So you hit for a higher average, you're going to get on base more. If the Yankees as a team hit for higher average, they're going to get on base more. They get on base more. The question isn't if they can put the ball in the seats. Yes, I mean, they're like 7th or 8th in home runs. I think they should be better than that. It's the Yankees. This is Yankee Stadium. It's not a great ballpark for doubles, but you got to be able to hit home runs at Yankee Stadium. That's a must. Like that has to happen. If you hit the 3rd or 4th most home runs and you improve your batting average, which improves your on base percentage, this team gets scary. They get a little younger, get a little faster. This team gets scary. You put a good we saw it last year. For the first 100 games, they gave a generational pitching staff, which is what this team's put up great pitching staffs with a really just not even a deep generational offense. Aaron Judge was there with a bunch of solid hitters, and they just fucking won. They did not lose games. It was like you're watching the 1998 Yankees. That's what it felt like. They're this close, it feels like. Just get bats. That's really the thing. Just get bats. Raise that average. Raise that OBP. Hit a little bit more home run. Just get a little bit better. Get a little bit deeper. Give Judge a guy. Judge needs that running mate. Big Papi had Manny Ramirez, and that's an iconic duo, right? I'm not saying Jeter had A-Rod because technically they didn't play in the 90s together, but you have Bernie Williams, you have the Paul Neals of the world. Judge needs that running mate. You know what I mean? Judge needs that. And Stan's capable of doing that, but I need a guy who's a lefty who can do that too. Rizzo tried it last year. It was close enough. But, man, could you imagine the Yankees having, like, a lefty just masher? Like, hits third, 30 home runs, hits, like, 260, 270, 340, 350 OBP. Sam, like, come on. Like, that'd be special.
Well, that's where I daydream about Juan Soto in this lineup, Brian. And, like, we've been talking about that for so long. I daydream about that. Like, I need that so bad. If that happened, this team is incredible if they add him. But, like, again, I don't know if they do that because of how much they don't want to be locked up in these contracts. And, you know, Stanton, I love Stanton. I think he's great, but damn, is he cooked. Like, I just feel like there's points in times I watch him, I'm like, dude, like, you're so uncompetitive. The play the other day when they sent him home and he was legit just like, I don't know if it was jogging or, like, even what it was, bro, if he's hurt or what the deal is, but, like, that's awful. And I feel like, yeah, Judge needs that guy. He needs a running mate. And, you know, back to the average thing, like, it raises your OBP floor because, like, you only see it in, like, extreme cases. Like I think, like, Kyle Schwarber right now is hitting, like, 170 with, like, a 312 OBP, which is, like, insane, by the way. Like, he's walking at, like, an insane clip, but, like, you don't see that kind of stuff, man. And, you know, we've been talking about it for years that we needed contact-oriented bats and, like, just guys that, like, can just move runners and drive runners in and, like, something, man. Like, instead of, you know, being the Yankees are always going to be home run or bust. It's kind of like in the formula. That's kind of how it's always going to be, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But if you add a couple bats that, like, can at least just get on base and get things moving, I think that's why we value DJ LeMahieu so much for so long, is because when he was at his peak, that's what he brought to this team. He was, like, one of the best leadoff men in baseball, and, like, you relied on him to get on base and score every single time he was pretty much on the base pass because Judge was hitting behind him. So, and that's why, like, in the offseason, I screamed for Andrew Benintendi because I was like, dude, like, this is, like, a high contact guy. The money that they gave him is insane. I think that, like, I wanted to give him, like, 3 years. If they gave him, like, 3 years, then, like, we'll, like, talk about it. But him getting $75 million is insane. But, like, that's the type of bat that the Yankees should go out and get. It's, like, not, like, super expensive, like, just, like, little pieces here and there that can really, like, just fill out this team and make this team whole again. And just change the mentality. Shift something. It's not working. It hasn't worked for the past 15 years. Why don't you make a swap? Like, Cashman, I love you. Not really, but, like, you've done some good things in your career. But, like, dude, if you're still going to be here, switch it up. Make something different. Tinker with some different things. Like, and I just feel like they're so stuck in their ways, and they haven't made those changes for so long that it's like, when is it actually going to happen? You know, is it when we get a new regime in 20 years? Because I know Cashman's probably going to be this team's general manager until he's 120 years old. But, like, the mentality shift has to happen. And, like, Judge needs that running mate. They need contact-oriented bats, rise that average, get that OBP up, hit more home runs. Like, it's just a recipe for success that, like, the pitching will get you there. The pitching is fine. You need bats, and that's all we've screamed for years, and that's all they need right now. And if they do that, then they can have success. But here we are. You know, we'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put, and I think end of the day, it's kind of just like, you know, not to say that the front office needs to be more like fans, because that's never a good thing. Usually that ends up going pretty poorly. But, like, hey, like, you know, there has to be some desire of, like, no, we can't look at 2021 as a success because we made the playoffs. You know what I mean? You got beat by the Red Sox, right? You know, just like that angle of, like, you know, we're the Yankees, and we're kind of like, people make fun of us on social media. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. Like, could you imagine could you imagine talking about the Astros and you're like, oh, this organization, they're losers. Like, you'd get swarmed on Twitter. You'd get made fun of by every fan base. That the Yankees need that level of, like, the Yankees need to feel disrespected. I feel like there needs to be that level of, like, we're the New York Yankees. You get what I'm saying? You know, and just, like, from our standpoint, we get frustrated watching this team, but we love this team. And I wish, like, I just hope the front office can recognize that there's a fan base wide frustration, and then adjust. I think a big thing is, and this is why I really like, Sam, like, I really respect your viewpoints on a lot of things, because I feel like it's not that we specifically need a certain guy to get fired to do it. We just need it to be done by somebody, right? If it has to come with Cashman getting fired, whatever. If Cashman makes the adjustment, great. it doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter, who makes the calls or whatever. Hal, like, if Hal's the guy who's like, you know what, guys, we're wrong. We need to change everything. Like, cool, man. Like, just somebody step up in that front office and be like, there is something severely wrong with the New York Yankees right now, and we need to fix that. And, at the end of the day, we have Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge. As long as you have these two guys in their prime, like, you just need to add pieces, right? You have the best hitter in baseball. You have arguably the best pitcher in baseball. You just got to figure that out. You're going to get rid of Donaldson in the offseason. You've got some guys coming off the books. Let's see what they can play with. But rest of the season, they've still technically got 2 months to try to figure out the playoff situation. They've got some young kids that they'll probably looking to bring up. I'd be shocked if Vasquez or Brito aren't in the rotation at some point in the next coming weeks. But we'll see how that goes. So let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. We know that this was, a little bit more of like a frustration podcast, but end of the day, I think there are a lot of really good baseball conversations that we'd love for you guys to get involved with that. So make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. These guys can check out our social medias. Our Twitters are above our heads. And of course, you guys can check us out on all our various social media platforms. Sam is absolutely cooking on the TikTok, and his TikToks also go on our other platforms like Instagram, Facebook, this YouTube page, and our Twitter. Yeah. So with that being said, Empire Sports Media is where our articles are at, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, y'all.